Yeah, if they're doing
areas that
their
are doing
own.
ongoing evaluation, and we'll want them to, if people are asking them about it, to be knowledgeable about,
Yeah.
yes, this is coming out or this came out. So
Yeah. Yeah. And just to know if they get questions about a survey, is it our survey? Is it their survey? Yeah, all of
yeah,
that. So
perfect.
that sounds great.
Just thought I should say that out loud. So
Yeah. Oh, no, no, it's good. It's a good reminder.
Good morning, everybody. Thanks for joining us. I'm looking at Barbara's background, like, okay, it's only been a week of winter, and I feel like I want to be there. I already want to be there on the beach with you all. Uh, we have folks still coming in, so we'll get started once the entries kind of slow down, but feel free to come off mute. And while we wait for folks to enter, is there anyone who's um, posted their application since the last time we met, or any numbers, anyone who's closed and want to share their application total numbers with us from either programs or individuals, depending on how you're doing it?
Region 9, I think, ended up with 265 total programs applied,
Okay.
and we have officially closed, which is also exciting.
Yeah, yes. Yeah.
Region 2 closes tonight just before midnight, and we currently have 139 programs applied.
Wow. Okay.
Region 6
Exciting.
also
Thanks for
closed
sharing.
last, sorry. Region
No, go
6
ahead,
also
Ryan.
closed last week. We had, not counting there's some duplicates in there, but 208 applications submitted to the form.
Okay. Yay. These
So
are
do you
big
all
numbers.
have
Go
a
ahead.
sense of what percent of your eligible
Yeah.
providers those numbers represent? No pressure if you don't, just wondering.
I'm not sure. Would you be able to clarify?
Would I want to clarify?
Yeah, I don't think I understand. What percent of eligible
Like
providers?
of the potential pool of eligible providers, what percent do your applicants actually represent? Like, did you get to 25%, 20%? Just, it was just inquiring minds. I'm interested because I think that that has implications across the initiative.
Mhm. Ours is about 47%.
Okay. Nice.
I do not know ours, but that's something I want to find out now.
Yeah. It's great.
I think, Sarah, we probably
Yeah,
are close.
I agree. Thanks, Joan. Well, thank you for joining us on this Monday. I think for those of us, I was at the Build Initiative conference. I got to see a lot of you in LA, which was fun to get to see you in a second location. I was going to say right after a holiday, but it's not. It's been a week since Thanksgiving, but when you travel the next week, it doesn't really feel like that. So feels like the Monday right after. So good to see you all. We are joined by the evaluators from AIR, who I will introduce in just a second. So that will be the bulk of our office hours today, is getting to hear and ask questions about the planned evaluation. And I know there's been some changes, so it'll be good to hear, those updates and implications for you all. And feel free. Of course, this is the main focus of the meeting. If we have time at the end, we'll, get to any other questions that you all have. And if we don't get to those, but you still have burning questions that you want to hear from each other on, we'll at least make sure that um, we can elevate those. But wondering before I pass it off to you, Gabby and Leanne, if Holly, or any folks from MyLeap, anything you want to add before we jump into hearing about the evaluation. Great. Great. Well, then, Leanne and Gabby, the floor is yours to tell us about the evaluation. They'll share a presentation. Just a few things that we know everyone always asks. We are going to record this just because for your colleagues who couldn't make it, we have some regions who, or at least a region who wasn't able to make it. You I will get the slides, and we have a one pager for you. So as you follow along, just know that all of those things are true. So with that, I'll pass it off to y'all.
you so much. Hi, everyone. My name is Gabby Fain from the American Institutes for Research, or AIR. And AIR is a nonprofit research and evaluation firm, and we do a bit of everything, but a very strong focus in early childhood issues and early childhood workforce issues. And we have been supporting Michigan for I don't know how long. I think Joy is on the call. It might be 2017 or 18. So a number of years supporting the state as they implement their preschool development grant. So you may have come across the name AIR in some capacity over the last 5+ years. I'm actually going to turn most of this over to my colleague Leanne, but I just wanted to kick us off and explain sort of who we are. Leanne, if you go to the next slide, I can handle those. We can do a little intros, and then I'll hand it to you. 2017. Thanks, Joy.
Yeah. I would say, and Gabby, you've been at AIR much longer than I have, so I think you've also been here for the full, yeah. So I'm glad you can share some of that. Yeah.
So I'm sort of overseeing the big picture of the study, but Leanne and our colleague Danielle are really moving it on a day-to-day basis. So Leanne is your point person. The other name or face you might see over the next year is our colleague Hans, and he is the methods guy, basically. He's the one who makes sure the numbers and the methods all work out. So before I pass it on to Leanne, I just want to say we're really thrilled to do this work with you. Our driving goal is to make it as easy as possible, but also as useful and impactful as possible. So we really want to generate data that you guys can use in your work and moving forward. So with that, I'll turn it over to Leanne.
Great. Thanks, Gabby. Yeah, so like Gabby said, we've been working in Michigan and working with the state for a long time in the kind of early childhood space, but especially for this project, since the summer, trying to think through the logistics of, how can we take this great initiative that's happening and the great work that's, that's planned for the next few years and really get some strong evidence about the impacts and about how it's working. So I want to give a little bit of context. The evaluation that we're doing, we've talked through and, come up with the plans, and we're really excited about what we're going to be doing with kind of the state with MyLeap. Our evaluation actually only goes through September of 2026. So I know that you all will be continuing to give out stipends through, the full 20 months of the initiative. But just a little bit of context for our research questions and our activities. This is really just kind of thinking about the initial kind of first few months of implementation. Hopefully there will be additional evaluation efforts to see kind of as the initiative continues, thinking about sustainability, thinking about the broader impacts. But just so you know, our context is just kind of the first few months of how you all get things off the ground. So the evaluation has kind of two sides or two different kind of buckets of research questions. The first is thinking about implementation, how actually pulling something like this off works and what are the necessary key ingredients to make it happen. And then the second is thinking about the outcomes or the, potential benefits for the participants and for the workforce in general. So in that first category of implementation, we really want to know kind of the variation and the choices that you all are making in terms of how this actually gets implemented. What are the successes and the things that work well? Where are you encountering challenges? How are you solving those? And kind of thinking about the lessons learned more broadly. I know that there was an early pilot with a few sites, but this is really a huge amount of work and a huge initiative that you all are taking on and you're really doing the groundwork of. And so anything that we can use to, help their initiatives, figuring out, what works, what doesn't, is going to be really important for making this, potentially even broader scale. The other question there under number 3 is really thinking about, one of the unique components of this initiative is kind of this match, kind of how you all are building up cash contributions or in-kind contributions. We really want to get a sense of what strategies, what works, what doesn't work, for building those kind of partnerships. And then the last one there is thinking about, from your perspective, how is this working? We'll do, obviously, I'll get to in a second, the outcome and do surveys of the actual participants, but we want to hear from your perspectives. Is this actually helping? Is this a valuable initiative? Is this something that is actually the participating educators, the employers, you all are hearing is, has the potential to make a big impact for these early education teachers? Under the outcome questions, things are a little bit more straightforward. I'm a qualitative or quantitative researcher, so for me, I'm like, the survey is straightforward, but that's my own bias. So we really want to hear from the people who are receiving those stipends, how it's impacting their day-to-day lives, not just how it's impacting, obviously the additional wages, but is that changing anything about their financial stability, how they're feeling about their job, whether they want to stay in that job and things like that. And then also thinking about it from kind of a program level. So not just the individual people who are participating, but are their employers, the directors of those centers or those family child cares, finding that things are running differently with these additional wages in place for their employees. So that was a lot of information. I'll kind of pause there in case there's any questions, but the only other piece we wanted to talk through is the actual research activities, which will also kind of make some of this a little bit more clear too, to see what data we're going to use to answer those questions. But any clarifications, or Gabby or Danielle, anything I missed?
No, I think you got it.
Okay. So in terms of the actual research activities, we have four kind of categories of things that we're planning to do, 2 surveys and then 2 sets of interviews. So the first will be surveys for all of the participants who are actually receiving those additional stipends in each of the regions. And we'll do that working with the MyLeap and the MyRegistry teams. The plan is to do these right before implementation, or before they actually get their first stipend, and then again, kind of late summer, to see how things like the individual participants, their job satisfaction, their perceptions of the workplace, their benefits, whether they want to stay in the field, all of those things have changed over time. Again, this will just be after, potentially 7 or 8 different, monthly stipends. It won't be the full term of, they'll continue to receive the stipends after they do this, what we're calling kind of a post survey. It's not actually at the end of it. But hopefully we'll be able to see some kind of early changes in some of these important factors. I know that for a lot of the individual coalitions, you all are also doing your own evaluations. So this isn't to kind of replace those, or we don't want it to necessarily compete with those or anything like that. And so all that we'll need on your end is kind of the regular data sharing that you'll do with the state, of kind of verifying that the participants that are selected are in MyRegistry and all of that. We'll use that data and we'll send out the survey. And we're also, very happy to work with you all to make sure that the timing, we don't want to have multiple surveys going out to people at the same time. But we also do want to kind of hit that narrow window between when they've been approved, they're definitely participating in the system or in the initiative, and before that first stipend goes out. So all of those kind of details we're, still working through, all the nuts and bolts, but very happy to work with you all to figure out the best solution there. Well, we're also planning on sending out a bigger survey to all of the eligible educators who are in MyRegistry. So this would be all assistant and lead teachers. That's like a very short kind of, we're calling it a pulse. So kind of getting a sense of where is the workforce right now in terms of a much smaller set of questions, a much smaller set of constructs. The surveys that we have for the participating teachers, we still only expect to be about 15 minutes or so. It's not a long, intensive process. Whereas for this pulse survey, we're planning on asking 2 to 3, just a couple of questions about, are you planning on staying in the workforce? Do you have access to benefits at your job? Some of the really key things. And the point of this is to get a little bit of a comparison for the sample of educators who are participating, who are getting those stipends, just to kind of contextualize what we're hearing from them of how it compares to the rest of the workforce in the state. And again, for that, we'll work directly with the state to get the data that we need. We won't necessarily need, there's no ask of you all for that. The second 2 pieces, we will be hearing, we want to get your perspective on how implementation and how the initiative is running. So we'll ask to do key informant interviews with you all. So with either one person who's really leading the charge or with a team at your regional childcare coalition. And again, give you a couple of months to let the dust settle after initial implementation, and just to kind of hear how it's going. What are the things that have been working well? What's not working so well? What have you changed? And what are you hearing from the participants so far? So this would be a virtual interview with someone from our team, um, just to kind of get your perspectives on what's working and what we can kind of inform back to future iterations of this project. And then we'll also want to do interviews and focus groups with a selected group of the participants. So some of the educators who are receiving stipends, some of the employers or childcare directors or family childcare home owners. We'll get a lot of rich data from interviews and or from the surveys and from speaking with you all, but it's always nice to also kind of hear the voices and perspectives of those people who are actually getting the benefits. It's one thing to see survey data of, there's a 2-point increase in financial well-being, but to really hear the stories of individual people talking about what the difference this has made or hasn't made, can really be impactful too. So we're really excited about this. I know it sounds like a lot of activities in a short amount of time, and we agree, but I think it's going to give a lot of different pieces of evidence of how this is working, both in terms of just, demonstrating all of the great work that you all are about to start, are already doing and are going to continue doing, but also kind of give some concrete next steps and feedbacks for how to make things run even more smoothly potentially in the future. So again, Gabby, Danielle, this is really, I'm speaking for the team, but this is really a team effort. So if either of you have anything else to add, please jump in. And otherwise, I think I saw there's a one pager in the chat for you all that, gives a little bit more detail and summary of the work that we're planning on doing, but we're also happy to answer any questions. It's very exciting to hear that you all have applications already and that people are getting the word out. We've seen the applications that you all put together and it's very ambitious and it's exciting to see that all actually start to come to fruition with real people who are in the system and starting to filter through those applications. Yeah, Maria.
Hi, thank you for that, walking us through that. I'm curious about how much of the data you'll be sharing with us as you're collecting it, and then, what, how will you disaggregate it? Like, could we also see, so our region, we're in Region 8, and a lot of our work is county-based, and so there might be, we'd be interested in learning more about the county differences and what you're seeing and some of that. So I'm just curious about how much of the data we'll be able to dig through ourselves.
Yeah, I think for now, I don't know that there's a plan to have to share the raw data. I don't know. Gabby is our contracts, and I feel like that's something that we could always set something up to share. Um, Going through all that. At this point, I mean, part of it is that when we ask for the feedback from the participants, we want to make sure that they know that it's anonymized. And the concern would be if somebody thinks, oh, if I say something bad about this initiative, are they going to take the money away? Which obviously would not happen, but just to make sure that people feel comfortable sharing honestly. And so I think all the reporting that we're planning to doing would be at the aggregate of, at the regional level. I think we could definitely think through if there's enough people in an individual county that we could share that without it identifying an individual. In general, I think the guideline is usually, if there's, 10 or so participants, and that's something that we could share. But we wouldn't want to report out like a county level when there's only 2 providers, and then it's pretty easy to know who those providers are. So our priority is making sure that the participants, confidentiality and all of that is protected. But I think there's definitely a conversation if there's something that like we could share a de-identified version, we could have continued conversations about. Does that make sense? Okay.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, of course.
One one thing I'd love to plant a seed in folks' minds or to chat about now is as we are looking towards interviews with you all and then going and then talking to educators and employers, what are the topics that you think we should make sure we dive into? Are there lessons or that are emerging or models that we should be looking at? We really, and this is not the only time you'll be able to provide that feedback for sure, but we want to make sure we are asking the right questions. Absolutely. And those interviews are nothing folks would have to prepare for, and we could send you a set of topics we would cover beforehand. But I just wanted to plant that seed as, we have our research questions, but there's lots of room within those questions to explore things that are emerging for you all as you're moving through this launch and then deeper into implementation.
Yeah.
What do you want to know from your employers, for example?
Yeah.
What do you want to know from staff that we might be able to help answer?
Yeah, and I'll stop screen sharing just so I can see you all, but the research questions and all of that is in that one pager, so you have those there. Yeah, that's a great point. Okay, especially if there's like something particularly innovative or different that you all are doing, we want to make sure we have a chance to talk through that.
We are always available, so we can pop into this meeting. I'm sure, I believe the one pager has Leanne's contact information. So, and I think, one of our guiding principles is be as flexible as possible. And many of us come from a practitioner background, so we fully recognize how busy people are. So we are really going to try to weave this into your workload. And we know how long your to-do list is another way of putting it.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, trying to balance how much insight you all are going to have from actually implementing this with how much you have to do. I think if our goal is have one call where we can go through everything with you, but like Gabby said, making sure that we ask the right questions. It's really important. So.
Do folks have questions, concerns, reactions? Sounds okay for now. We'll wait and see. Holly or Joan or Sarah, as you hear us, any thoughts that you have or questions that you think others may have right now?
I think the only other thing I wanted to elevate is that AIR has been looking at all of your applications and your plans for selection of participants. So really thinking about being able to explain the different priorities that all of you set with your regional coalitions. And so when we're having our meetings this week and next week, I'm going to be bringing this up. But what we would like to ask is that you all send kind of the final copy of your applications to AIR so they can look at what were the questions that you asked. I have seen all of yours, but a lot of them I have marked up versions that aren't necessarily the final version, or I have links to them. So I will talk more about that when we meet individually, but that'll be another data point because I know a lot of you have been curious about what other people are doing. And we have several different ways we're approaching this work, whether you're having the educator apply or the business apply or all kinds of different things that are happening there. And I think it'll be a good way for us to get a snapshot of how many of you prioritized people who are caring for infants and toddlers and some of those things. So really using that against your proposals that you had inside your applications and any addendums. I know a couple of you resubmitted some things as your thinking and circumstances changed. So just as an FYI, they'll be helping us with that as well.
Yeah, that sounds great. Thank you, Holly. Yeah, the more that we can get from what you've all already written out rather than having to have you do it again, the better. So.
As folks think of questions, because I know people do have some, thoughts about really wondering, making sure they track certain things. One thing I've heard and from a few folks throughout the process, Gabby and Leanne, is just wondering or just making sure that the way that coalitions collect data from participants kind of matches or doesn't contradict what's needed for the evaluation. So I'm just wondering if you could speak to that.
I think that that is a great question and it makes perfect sense to me. I just want to assure folks that this evaluation, the way we've designed it in collaboration with MyLeap, is not intended to replace any local evaluation or sort of monitoring and reporting data that you have to share with MyLeap. So we think of our evaluation almost as a standalone that sort of takes care of itself. So I think in previous iterations of the evaluation design that were maybe a little bit more complicated, we started to go down a road where there would be a lot more data sharing, but we have scaled back not the scope of the evaluation, but sort of how we're doing it. So if there are worries about how you're collecting data, for the purposes of the evaluation, you can cross that worry off. But that I think that question still stands for, Holly and the MyLeap team. For example, if there's data that the state is asking you to collect, I would obviously defer to MyLeap and ECIC to support you in that process. So it's more simple from our lens, but I know for you all, you've got to do all of this work. Does that make sense, Sarah?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I'll just add, I mean, I think we're hoping the survey that the participating educators will get is, they'll have, one in January or whenever someone is approved. If there's a later rollout, we'll try to get them the survey as well before they get paid that first stipend, even if it's not necessarily in that first month. And then again later in the summer. And so I know from reading the applications, some of you all have much more involved, monthly surveys or things like that. The goal of ours is to be really kind of light touch. And we know that for some, there might be similar questions that we're asking on those surveys, but, rather than trying to coordinate across, let's all use the same exact scale of financial well-being or something like that. We're asking our questions and we know that there might be, participants who are answering the same questions, but that way we can kind of keep things separate, keep things, de-identified and secure. And that way you all can also you don't have to worry about what other coalitions are doing. I think there's so many differences, like Holly mentioned, in terms of the implementation, in terms of how, the specific decisions that trying to let you all do this independently, we're kind of just also doing things independently on top of that. And really doing, just those two surveys so that we're not, making people fill out more information than they need to or provide the same thing multiple times. And the way that the survey will go out will be actually through my registry. So the participants will get an email or get a message directly through that portal. We're happy to, if there's something that it's helpful for you all to share and give them reminders that it's coming or something like that. But the goal is really for this to be kind of outside of your domain. You don't have to worry about sending out the emails or anything like that. They'll get it directly through the state resources.
Any other questions, worries?
I'm just, given what you just said, Leanne, I'm just wondering, regional coalition folks, are you going to want a flag for people that a survey is coming from my registry? Would you like language that you can share with people? Do you think people will be confused to get something from my registry and be working with you? Or do you think that's going to be really clear to people?
I think it would be helpful if you're looking for feedback, just because there's so much information out there. And, even if the language could say this is being sent out to you on behalf of this region for you to participate, something that we could help clarify, because we know their inboxes are pretty full, and to kind of, get through the noise.
Yeah.
To get better results, I think.
No, that's great. I'm wondering too if it's something like even our email invitation. I think we can give you all a heads up to communicate with them however you feel appropriate, and we can, provide email text. But that obviously is however you want to communicate with them. That's not our decision, but I'm thinking too of maybe our draft that goes out to my registry, we can share with the coalitions and make sure, does this make sense? Are they going to understand if we say, this is on behalf of the state and your coalition? So, but I think, yeah, that kind of two-pronged approach of, you know, the state communication will make it clear that, we're working with the local regions, and then you can also communicate that it's coming from the state would be really helpful. So great.
Well, we're excited to partner with you all. I don't want to cut off any time to chat. We're here and can answer questions, but I did just want to say, like, we're super excited to document your work. I really think this is such an exciting project. There are very few efforts like this across the nation, particularly at a statewide scale. And so I think having an evaluation attached to this work is a great opportunity to tell your story and to help other communities who are thinking about this. So.
And it's nice I feel like we've been talking with, Holly and Joan and all. It's nice to get to see everybody and meet you all as well.
Thank you so much for joining us, Leanne and Gabby. And if folks have questions, well, one, please, say them now. But also, if folks have questions ongoing, we'll collect those too and make sure those get shared in the proper way as the folks are reflecting on this. But anyone else have questions, things you may want to make sure you get to say now? I think our brains are still warming up, so I will definitely
You got my
appreciate you
email. Yeah.
coming here.
But I
Yeah.
know if you all are, especially if you're currently accepting it, if there's other things that you need to talk through, I don't want to take up too much time with this if you don't have questions yet. So I can give you that time back for office hours too.
Great. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to join us, partners from AIR.
Yeah,
And
of course.
we
And
will open
stay
the floor.
warm. Yeah.
You too.
Yeah.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Gabby.
All right. Well, folks I know as we started the call with, a lot of you have applications closing. You're kind of coming to that turning point from getting the applications to, well, reviewing the applications and turning towards implementation. So I really just wanted to open the floor for questions for you all that you have for each other, or, wonderings, even half thoughts about, like, here's what we're doing. If folks have questions, but I'm thinking, I was able to talk to Carla about your review process that you're structuring coming up. And so that was top of mind if folks are having, if anyone feels like we have this really great thing that we want to share about how we're reviewing all these applications, if folks have questions about that. And payment was another thing that came up with a few folks of, like, now that it's getting real, of you're thinking about how you're cutting those checks, questions there. But really any questions, updates for folks. I will be silent and let folks put their thoughts out.
I was wondering if anyone has asked for specific language once you communicate out who has received who is going to be part of the process, on how to communicate that out to the people who were not chosen to be part of the process. Just wondering if there's any directions on how to communicate some of those pieces so we're all on the same type of message.
I'm
And
wondering if no one's brain
go
has
ahead.
gotten there yet, right? I think it's a good question. And I think one of the things to keep in mind is that for 4 of the regions, there'll be the opportunity to resubmit. for some additional funding once those groups hit the 1.6 million. So some of that messaging might be a little bit different, that people might be on a wait list. And I think thinking about how you are going to handle wait lists should people drop out. What is that messaging that you want to do? To your point, Barbara? I mean, no, right now might be the way, or there may be people that plain don't qualify based on your selection criteria. One thing that is, a possibility as well is if any of the regions are not able to reach the 1.6 million, we will in February be letting you know how much money there is that's left, and what the process would be to be able to apply to be able to increase your amount in your region. So that would be an opportunity as well. So I think some of that will be very dependent on what the situation is. I know that some of the regions, as you're doing the first round, there may be some messaging about this is our first round, and we're hoping to have more funding soon, and that it is certainly looking that those who are getting more funding in the future will also will pay everyone the full amount, just in a different cadence. So they will still, anyone part-time who's starting later. So in our regions that don't have applications open yet because they're starting a little bit behind everyone else, they will still be paying part-time people the total of 4,000 or full-time people 6,000 over the duration of our grant. So I know some of you hear from and talk to people who are in neighboring areas, so I think it's good to let people know that that's true. And I think we've talked about this as well, that in the case where we're swapping people out, if we really want to think of these as slots, we will not be back paying people who. So if Sarah is one of my grantees and she drops out and we put Joan in there, Joan does not get back pay for the months that Sarah had been paid. So Barbara, I will continue to connect with folks and maybe Sarah and Lindsay too. And we can kind of collect different ways of breaking the not great news to people who will be disappointed, but with kind of some variations of that language. Do you think
Yeah,
that sound good, Sarah?
absolutely. Yes, I was going to say that's a good reminder of a helpful TA need of sometimes just having the email language or the letter language and being able to work from what someone else did is helpful. So that is added to the list here.
So I can actually answer a question that came up at our last meeting. Wanted to share this. I have this in writing, and we'll put put answers to a number of questions that have been submitted up in the TA site. But we had such a great question about what about people who do not work full year, if your region is approving people who don't work full year. I know some of you, that's a criteria actually, that you're going to be prioritizing people who do work full year, but we may have some people who work for school districts or especially our GSRP and Head Start folks who may not work full year. So MyLeap is going to allow you to decide how you want to handle this, but ask that you document it. This kind of comes into a number of different scenarios. So it's not only people that potentially are working, only school year time. This could also be people who are on FMLA, people who have a baby. There are going to be things that happen where people may be still employed or laid off for a short amount of time. What we want to do is allow you to really think through what makes the most sense in your area, and document it. This is something that we did bring up with AIR this is going to be kind of an interesting little caveat. So that's why we really want it documented to be thinking about what worked and what didn't. And what what we're really interested in you thinking about, though, is what helps encourage people to come back. That is kind of the whole point of this, right? Keeping people in these roles. I know that it's not going to be possible to say, Carla, I'm paying you for the 3 months that you're off, and if you don't come back, you owe me that money back. That's not going to happen. That's not going to work. And I really would not encourage us to be doing that. I think that maybe you all want to be thinking about, and this is such a great topic for all of you to kind of chat about amongst each other in these opportunities about what are you thinking? Do you give 1 month prior and then when they come back, they get some more? Do you just continue to pay them? Um, what we know from GSRP is that, and some Head Starts, they're all different how they do this. And a lot of the intermediate school districts give people the opportunity to make a choice if they get paid for 12 months or they get paid for 9 months. So we didn't want to have a flat rule on all of this because it could be very different. In the cases of maternity leave and other kinds of leaves where the program is still running, someone's going to have to step in and be filling that role. So you're going to want to think about, are you going to pay Norica, who steps in when Carla is out, instead? And just make sure you're documenting this and you're being super transparent with people about what the process is. And now's a great time to be, I know everyone's crazy busy just selecting people, but to start thinking about how are you going to handle these things because it will come up. I think everyone's going to have situations where we have this. But at the end of the day, we want to encourage people to come back and really think about how do we really blend that into your decision making to make it attractive. And of course, we want to understand, is it not attractive enough for folks, or do we just not pay them? So I know it's a non-answer answer. How about that? But with a little bit of guidance to be thinking about. So questions, clarifications, ideas, thoughts? I think we want people to be able to get their money and we want them to come back. So
I just want to say I appreciate the flexibility, and I'll be really interested to see at the end of this if we do go through periods like that, how everyone does it and what worked and what didn't to bring the people back, keep them in their
right.
jobs.
Yeah,
So thank you for that flexibility.
absolutely. I think it'll be good to learn what happens. And certainly when people, especially in the cases of maternity leave or illness or something like that, it's a high cost time. So
It seems like it could be really helpful for people to use these office hours or in between office hours as a way to kind of share what you're doing on these things, because while everybody has flexibility, it might be helpful to know what others are sharing. I know we do have a lot of touching along the borders of regions. And even if people understand, like, yep, your region is doing this and this region is doing that, it still might be really helpful to try to have like a pool of at least shared info that are being shared. So just a suggestion of this could be a place where you could share. And then we can put it in the TA resource document. Like if we have your stuff, we can stick it in there so everybody can see it.
really good point, Joan. And in addition, we may have businesses that have applied in multiple regions. And if one center in one county, one region has one rule and another has a different one. That's why we just really need to document it, and it's based on what the coalition decided that, and so that if the business owners know that we're handling it in a different way, that's important. So we will be elevating where do we have kind of the businesses that have multiple locations where we have overlap. So much data.
Yeah, we'll think of a way to collect some of these implementation touch points. I think, well, one, feel free in the meantime to share, but I think thinking of a way to organize and collect them um, so that they're easy for you to contribute and to see at the same time, I think is helpful, as well as kind of be good. Just thinking of like all the data, as you just said, how you have the opportunity to collect through this project as well, and employment practices and sort of how you treat staff during the summer or keep leave points definitely impact turnover. So, meaning how the employer treats, folks. So I think those are helpful touch points to know about, but there's also such a, collecting all of the data you need to collect to understand those points is something to be thinking about as well. Other questions on this particular issue or others that folks have? Any other pain? I mean, I'm thinking like, what are the things that are maybe, hopefully they're not keeping you up at night. They might be if you're like me, keeping you up at night, but things that feel really uncertain or you're not sure, what you're going to do with them. Are there things like that? And Barbara, I think that was a great one about, how do we communicate to folks who maybe aren't selected, others that you're thinking through, small or big?
Hey, Maria, would you like to share the question that you asked of me about from the business owner? You know what I'm talking about, right?
Was it the original one about performance?
Yes. This is a good one. I typed something up, but I think this is a good heads up for folks.
Yeah, so we did have a business owner reach out and indicate that one of the things that occurred during COVID with those additional stipends is that individuals, once they received it, then they didn't think they could call in more frequently because they had those additional resources. And so they found that performance started to go down for certain folks. And so she was requesting whether or not she could um, not give stipends to individuals if their performance wasn't up to what she indicated that she wanted to do, or if they called in. And so the question was really about that, like her ability to give it or not give it. And if somebody could get, so if they were selected, would could they lose their spot based on performance? And so that was a real issue for her that she was really concerned about. And um, I have mixed feelings about this. I'm sure lots of you do, but what she was seeing is her trend was that she was seeing a lot of staff that were calling in more frequently because they had those additional resources during COVID, and she was afraid that that might happen again with this route. I see your nose curling there, Joan.
Well, I'm just wondering, like, well, so what are you thinking? I mean, how are you?
We told her no.
Yeah,
Yeah.
this is one that my leap weighed in on. When
Yeah.
people are selected, they are eligible to be getting the full stipend as long as they work there. That
Yeah.
we're not going to have this tied to performance or attendance or any of those other things. We're not getting involved in that. This is purely going to be anyone who's accepted and that they're, eligible at the time of acceptance. Unless they leave, they should continue to get the funding.
I
Yeah.
do think it's something that we should watch, right? Because again, the premise is this is meant to keep people in the field. What is that trend? if what she's saying is true, and again, this is her truth, right, for her particular
Mhm.
sender with her particular staff that she has, if there are patterns across the state that sort of becomes, if she's just an anomaly, then that's, that's on her. But if there seems to be this all across the state that we're seeing, some business owners are seeing it, then we should be aware of it.
Yeah, and it would be interesting to understand it more from the early educator's position as well, not just what the business owner employer sees. But I guess I'm really appreciative of the raising of the issue and just like I guess I feel like this initiative is founded on the belief that I think we all have that folks already deserve this money. Like they didn't have to do anything else to earn it. They didn't have to get more quality training. They didn't have to get another credential. They didn't have to like it's a floor lifting strategy. So it's all these different dynamics to balance, which is what I hear you saying, Maria, which is really important. So
Yeah. And I would just add, this just really reminded me of when I was in DC and we gave people $1,000 bonuses for the through a early Head Start childcare partnership, and we saw a lot of people leave because they finally had enough money to find a job that they wanted more. But it was a really important data point. I mean, it wasn't like in droves, but it was a very, very important data point, especially in a pilot, to be able to see people's natural behavior kind of play out. And who knows, it could be for anything. Like now I can afford to go get my dental cleaning finally. So so I think it's important to everyone's point to collect that data. Shanae, I see your hand raised, so go for it.
Yeah, and I was just going to say, I mean, it's a great discussion. I was just going to say that the employer themselves has a full authority and are empowered to move forward in any way they want based on performance, irrespective of these stipends. So if they find a staff person with a performance issue, then they need to, they have the opportunity to provide corrective action and or remove them. So that's I think a good place for them to be in and a good place for us all to not have to be in. Is that they're still the employer, and so and we don't have to get into the any of those issues really, quite frankly. So
Yeah.
we are asking people when they're selecting recommending people for the stipend, what is their what's their reason, like is it performance, is it just interest, is it other things. So we've got kind of like a drop down just to kind of collect that information. And it was interesting this morning, I was looking at those that were coming in that at least one, it just stood out. I mean, said performance was the reason why that they want to keep their talented people. So
Thank you for sharing.
I think it'll be interesting too, because we have the two different models of paying the educator directly or going through the business. Uh, how does that, of course, my evaluation mind starts, how does it impact how people feel about their business owner if they've applied on their behalf to get this versus not? What does that make you feel better about who you work for, that they're doing going the extra mile to be able to get this money for you? Or, it'll be interesting. Lots
I
of good data.
suspect, I just wanted to comment on that because in the surveys that we did earlier in these regions, that I suspect, just like the parents who were getting additional support, that they would say that if my employer did this for me, I would feel more loyal to them. And that number was like 90 something percent. So I suspect that you're going to see people feel more loyal to the employer.
I'm happy to give folks a few minutes back, but wanted to see if there are any questions. I'm especially just curious, review, payment, we're all good to go there. Anything folks want to share, things that have emerged?
I'll just share that for regions 1 and 3, our application closed on Friday. We are expecting to be able to do a second round of draws of lottery as we open up more funds. So the applications are like still open, but they have a notification now that's like, hey, this is not actually open. This is for a future lottery. But this week is our week of figuring out what verification and data cleaning and all that looks like. So as we learn things, I will let you all know. But right now, I know that I have a short list of people who applied in the wrong of our 2 regions. Like they applied in region 3, and I'm like, you're from Marquette and your program's in Marquette. So I have to move them. And I know I have at least one who is also an educator based in Flint who also works in Flint. So I get to send them to the correct region. So if y'all hear from me, it's because I'm finding people in my applications who don't belong there. And that's been a really interesting thing that I tried to make it as clear as possible who this is for. And people still still just applied, because how does it hurt them? So I'll send you people. Sorry, everyone.
Hopefully they applied both places and found their way, but that's, yeah, you never know. You always find fun little idiosyncrasies.
I had a question. I know there's been a lot of conversation about kind of consistent information to provide to educators about tax benefits and benefits cliff. And I wondered if there is a resource still being developed, and if so, when we might expect it, or what other plans people have implemented and could share. That's one of the things that, as I think about our rollout over the next month, I'm not prepared to do quite yet. So any guidance appreciated.
I'll say really quickly as folks prepare to share, because I'd love to hear folks with regional resources that Lindsay and I are meeting later today, but we've been working with Joan and others to put together some resources. So those will definitely be coming, but I know others have been doing some things. I remember Shanae mentioned before they were collaborating with a regional human services, I think, office on the benefits question, but other folks on tax and benefits cliff want to share anything? Go ahead, Shanae.
Yeah, I would just say, we're super excited. We're going to do this webinar next week. It's such a tight timeline. I think on the 17th with our local DHHS. And again, we have a deep relationship with them because they also have a person in our office that we share and to help with CDC scholarships. And so we're still figuring out the tax implication piece. But our new person is a CPA, and our CFO is a CPA, and even I could do that tax piece. So we'll do that next week on the 17th. We will record it, and we will require once the participants enroll, they must either attend this or watch it so that they will can do an attestation that they have and to acknowledge that they've been given information. And then we're also going to put up a calculator as well.
Great. Is that something that I'll follow up with you, Shanae, to maybe see if you would be willing to share just as an example for folks
Sure. We're happy to share once we do it. Mm-hmm.
Great. Others in our last minute together who want to share anything?
Super fast. I just learned how to make a map for addresses in Google Sheets. And apparently we also have an applicant whose program is located in Texas. So just thought I'd share that little chuckle with y'all.
Nice. I love that person Googling maybe early childhood wages every day, just trying to find something. Great. Well, our next office hours are next Monday, the 15th, I believe. I'm looking at my calendar correctly. So we'll see you soon. You will hear from us in the interim with some of these asks about the things that have come up today to start to gather information, but appreciate you all coming this morning. And again, we're always here. Email the technical assistance email or us directly with anything you need, and appreciate your time this morning, and yours as well, Holly, and our partners from MyLeap too. Thank you, everyone.